Hey everyone, welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you're a subscriber. My garden people have said I haven't been posting enough garden videos, so I'm posting a garden video. So this is the new property. We've been here about 8 months, and instead of starting new raised beds, I decided to take advantage of this space that runs along the driveway. This provided me an opportunity to work and isolate the soil instead of having to create whole new garden beds with, thousands of dollars worth of good organic soil. And the fence can act as a trellis and a wind barrier. The pluses about growing it along the driveway here, and you have to think about these things, especially in regards to climate change, is that concrete and asphalt is going to, or stone is going to create a heat effect. It's going to create a solar effect, or a sorry, I haven't had coffee yet, it'll come to me in a second. So the plus is, if you're planting early, it's going to help keep your seeds or your baby plants a little bit warmer. But once the summer sun really kicks in the summer months, it's going to really raise the temperature of your soil and dry it out dramatically. So in that case, you're going to have to do one of two things. You're going to have to put in a good drip system for consistent moisture, because that's what tomatoes really love, is consistent moisture. Or you're going to have to really keep up with your hand watering, which I've been trying to keep up with my hand watering, but it is really precarious. I always feel like I'm overwatering or underwatering. But last night it was funny. I thought I could water in really deeply and then give it a day, because our temperatures haven't been that high. They've only been in the low 80s, but that doesn't matter, because the sun and how it does its thing is different than temperature, especially when we're dealing with this strip of asphalt. And so that's interesting to understand too about climate change in regards to how cities heat up more, and how in the future we're going to have to plant more trees, and we're going to have to figure out what to do with the concrete and the dark colors on the tops of our roofs in order to reflect sun. Okay, let's get to some gardening stuff. These 4 o'clocks were just volunteers, and I kept them because they bring pollinators. They don't need any water, and they're just beautiful. This is loofah. Now, the cool thing about loofah, like the loofah sponge, is that it doesn't come from the ocean. Many people don't know that. This, when it's happy, it does need heat and humidity, so we're getting a really slow start because we don't have a super hot climate here. And yes, I would like to murder those roosters over there. The loofah is actually a vegetable used in Asian cooking. When you cut the loofah, if it's about 4 inches or less, it's a really tender little vegetable that's similar to cucumber. Or once this vine really takes off, it'll go up the fence and all the way around. And then you just let those loofah form into large vegetables, which then dry. You peel the skins, you knock the seeds out, and you have your classic exfoliant, the loofah sponge, which is super cool and fun for kids to experience. These are my cucumbers. So I have a cool variety of cucumber. My spouse's family sent us some seeds from China, and they're Chinese cucumbers. Shh. They're light-skinned, super sweet, and the skin is really thin, and it doesn't have a bitter flavor at all, and that's lovely. So I have these growing up this fence with just string. If you're wondering what this powder is, that is not 7 dust. I don't do 7. This is Diatomaceous Earth. Basically, it's ground up volcanic rock, and it's a go-to for organic gardens in regards to pesticides, but also if you put it in the soil, it helps to hold moisture in and helps to balance out soil acidity a little bit. The reason I was tossing the Diatomaceous Earth out here was a preemptive strike. I always say in regards to bugs, you don't wait for the bugs to show up because they're there. They're there. They're just waiting for the buffet to open up. And we have cucumber beetles in abundance this year that have been eating the roses. You may have seen cucumber beetles. It's a small beetle. They're a beautiful chartreuse green with black spots. Now, it's not the damage that the cucumber beetles do in regards to chewing on the leaves that is the bummer. The bummer is that the cucumber beetles carry a virus called the wilt. And one day, your squash or your vines or your cucumbers will look healthy and beautiful like this. And literally within 24 hours, the entire thing will be wilted up and dead. And you'll be scratching your head thinking, what did I do wrong? And you didn't do anything wrong, except you didn't control the cucumber beetles. And they gave your vegetables the cooties, and it's very depressing. Because usually it always happens after you have a super mature plant that's ready to start producing. Oh, what a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Look at this. And you know, with cucumbers, a lot of people don't know, you really want to pick them when they're younger. Usually 6 inches, between 5 and 6 inches is perfect, because that's when they're the most tender and they don't have a lot of seeds. And don't peel the skins. The only time you want to peel the skins of a cucumber is if you buy them from the grocery store, because usually it's covered with pesticides or who knows what. And it's often the cucumbers from the grocery store also have kind of more of a bitter skin and thick. But if you're growing your own cucumbers, like with everything, most of the nutrition is actually in the skin. And in the morning, when I come out and do my watering and pruning and what have you, I will pull one of these right off the vine, and it will be one of the first things I eat for the day. I believe eating living food is different than eating fresh food. And I think if you eat fresh food, if you have that luxury to grow your own food every day in a disciplined manner, so eating at least twice a day, 2 to 3 times a day in the form of a salad or vegetables cut and eaten within the first 30 minutes that you remove them from the plant, that it can often, along with, diet and exercise, reverse age by 10 years. I had surgery on my face about 4 or 5 months ago, and even with my face being messed up, people still guess me 10 years younger than what I am. And I've always, this is what I've done. I've just eaten what I grew, and it's as simple as that. The loofahs, these loofahs are looking a lot better because they're getting more sun. But isn't that leaf beautiful? It really is. It's a beautiful vine. I thought I saw one little loofah. Oh, look. It's our first little, see it? First little loofah sponge forming. Very cool. So these are my tomatoes. I finally have flat, sunny land versus the other property that I worked so hard to have a garden, but it was in the middle of the redwood forest, and the microclimate posed all kinds of issues, not including redwood roots and critters. But now there's nothing stopping me, and I counted my seeds in the beginning of the season that I've been collecting for a couple decades, and I had 55, probably more actually, but recorded 55 varieties of weird tomatoes, heirloom tomatoes from all over the world, 55. And I didn't grow 55 varieties, but I do have, I think, 80 tomato plants in. So it's going to be a really exciting season. And like usual, I planted them too close together. But oh man, the varieties I have, you just won't believe it. I've got jet black ones. I've got white ones. I've got ones from Ukraine. I've got ones from Peru. I have Polish heirlooms that I snagged when I was in France, of all places. I've got this beautiful peach Romas. I've got indigo kumquats. I've got pink Japanese, pink Mexican ribbed. I could go on and on. So you can see where I put my squash. Now, this is how I usually roll to try to save time. And this is kind of my version of French intensive gardening, though I could have spread it out a little bit more. What I'm doing is, of course, I plant things a little close together, which means more pruning and more care. And what this does by planting things close together like this, then I planted all my watermelon and different melon vines, my cantaloupe vines, towards the front and center. So what this is going to do between the squash and these vines is I'm going to train them along the top of the soil, which is going to create a barrier from the sun and help to hold in moisture. And guess who won't be weeding hardly at all? Me. Because that's the whole idea behind French intensive gardening, from what I understand, is learning what works well together and knowing just how much to plant to cover as much of the soil as possible to hold in water and to keep weeds from coming up. So the only thing is, when you do this form of gardening, you really have to be up on your insect control and your pruning, because you need to get a lot of air through these leaves and around the plants. And in general, you don't want your tomato plants making contact with the soil. You don't want the leaves. So when I get in here, I'm going to prune these leaves that are now drooping down. I'll prune these up a good 12 inches up into the plant, and then do a chop and drop, which means chop these up and just toss them down in the soil, which will further add compost and nitrogen to the soil and hold in water. I know I'm giving you a lot of information, but that's what I do. So tomatillos, I plan to can a lot of verde sauce this year. Verde is delicious and nutritious. Great to share. You know, with the economy being the way it is, if you have the means to buy the canning jars, I'm a total canning jar Nazi. I literally tell people, if I give you something and you don't give me the canning jars back, that tells me that you don't like it and you're not going to get any more. Because I spend hundreds of dollars on canning jars every year because I'm such a generous person and give so much away. That being said, have your friends save their canning jars for you, and also get them when they're on sale. And canned goods make the most wonderful gift. And a couple months ago, I did not go to the grocery store or leave the house for 7 weeks and lived off of nothing but the food that I had saved up. And in this time of supply chain issues and the precarious nature of the environment and politics, it's a really good feeling to know that you have a bunch of food stored away that is completely of your making. So you know what was in it, how clean your hands were, what kind of water or ingredients you used. It is the best form of Social Security and a wonderful form of love to share with your special people. Look at these beautiful watermelon starts. I got the watermelons mixed with the cantaloupes. Look at this baby. I know this drives everyone crazy, but this is the beginning of a really healthy ground cherry. If you don't know about ground cherries, you probably saw my videos. Grow ground cherries. They're incredible, and this has just started. This little sucker is going to get 3 to 4 feet wide, and the little fruit it will make is not only delicious, fresh, and full of vitamins, but great for making jams and jellies. It's just a really easy to grow, somewhat drought resistant plant that a lot of people don't know about. This is the annual variety, not the German or the Peruvian, South African variety that will perennialize. That's a completely different bird. So you can see I'm trying to get my people that I share this garden with to come out and do some work with me, because it's endless when you're not using a cage method. But what I do with these strings, and then slowly wrap my plants up around, get them pinned up there, I could tell very quickly they're going to exceed this fence, but that'll be okay. It's a beautiful random sunflower. And you know, sometimes you just let stuff happen like this because, well, it's beautiful and it's gonna draw in pollinators. And cats. Hey Joe, good morning. Morning. Some prickly prickly pear cactus. These have only been in a couple months, and they're doing really, really well. It's interesting. This is one of those few cactus that seems to really actually enjoy extra water. You can eat the petals or the actual plant, or when soon it will produce a flower and fruit. That's going to be really exciting. As you can see, my melons are still growing in the front to create the shade. Man, so healthy. Look at these. These tomatoes are looking outstanding. Trying to think what else I can share with you. Oh, got some goji berry vines going in here. I planted a lot of goji berry vines. And the thing about the goji berry, not only do they produce an amazing, super antioxidant-filled berry, but the tender shoots you can actually eat like a vegetable or a spinach. And if you're wondering where you can get goji berry from, you can start them from seed, but it takes a while. Some things just aren't practical to start from seed, especially if you're older. And that's where I'm thinking right now, like, stuff's got to happen like within the next 5 years. So we went to the Chinese grocery store where they sold goji berry shoots as a vegetable, just like you'd buy a bunch of celery. And we took the shoots and we brought them home, and we stripped the leaves and ate them. And then we rooted the shoots with a little rooting powder. So they look just like this, basically. They were about 12 to 14 inches. And then after those were well rooted, we planted them, and these will perennialize. And you can see we've got them all over the property right now. So eventually we're going to have a bumper crop of goji berries. And it seems like the insects leave them alone. They're funny with water. They don't like too much water, which is a good thing because you can neglect them. And I had heard the story about when the Chinese were building the railroads across the United States, that they would chew on goji berry seeds and then spit out the seeds, or, you know, the other way we get rid of things. And that there's wild goji berries growing all across where they put in the railroads all across the West because of that early history. And obviously, if they're growing without any help, it's a good fruit or a good plant that can handle a lot of neglect, doesn't need the pesticides and the amount of fussing that other fruits and berries may need. Look at this. Whew, so good. These are all the German ground cherries. And something's been nibbling on these, so I've been hitting them up with Diatomaceous Earth. But the problem is, because they're so low to the ground, when I'm watering, the powder's getting knocked off. So I have to kind of powder them regularly with the Diatomaceous Earth. Another squash. Okay, so here's another thing I do that may be helpful to you, because we have a really long season here. Takes a little longer to get started because we don't have the heat, but once it does, often we can often we can grow tomatoes up into November, especially if you just protect them a little bit. So you'll see them selling, depending where you live around here, starting to sell tomatoes really early, like March, late February, for the warmer parts of the county. And then you see them reselling tomato plants for the second season, and August, late July, August. So that's what I've done also, is I'm going to have my early harvest of tomatoes, and then my harvest that was going to come in a month to 3 months after that. And how I did this is I started all of my tomatoes from seed, of course, and I left some of the seedlings in the actual containers that I started them in the little seed container, and that dwarfed them. And then I transplanted them into little cups. You can see the little cups with the names on them over here. And that kept them small as I was giving them away to everybody. And then I transplanted them only like 2 weeks ago. So these, believe it or not, are the same age as these giant ones. They were just dwarfed because they were stuck in their containers. I didn't let them flower when they were in these little containers. I kept pinching off the flowers. But what this has created is I'm going to have my late season tomatoes when these tomatoes are burned out and not producing at all, weather permitting. Fertilizer. This year, I played around with for the first time because I have a friend who had supernaturally large tomatoes and ground cherries and peppers last year. And she gave me this formula for a biodynamic farm and called Love Apple Farms. And it was all a dry formula, a mix of like 5 different things that you put down into the hole before you planted your vegetables into it. And it's just, roots are just starting to make contact with that. But not one yellow leaf, really strong immune systems. But one of the most interesting things about this formula, because they also had a formula for worm cast tea that you use as a foliant or you feed, you put on top of the leaves. And I do that about once a week for 2 reasons. One, I mix up this specific formula because it helps to deter insects and disease. And one of the things you put in that worm tea formula is aspirin. And supposedly the aspirin helps with delivering the nutrients and it's good for the plant's immune system. Do your own research. I did a little bit and I'm like, it's just aspirin from the dollar store. Can't hurt anything. So you take a cup of worm castings and I take a cup of granulated seaweed or seaweed powder, which isn't necessary. You can just use the worm castings. And you throw it in 3 gallons of water and you let that sit for 24 to 48 hours. And then you sift that. And then you take your aspirin and you toss in about 3 per gallon. So you throw in 9 aspirin, dissolve that really well. And then 1 cup of that liquid fertilizer per gallon in a sprayer. And you just gently hit up your leaves with it. What I also add, though, my secret ingredient, is a tablespoon per gallon of kaolin clay. Kaolin clay begins with a K-A-K-A-O-L-I-N. This is what they're using as a sun shield or a sunscreen for plants across the world now, because it's not the sun we grew up with. And even if your plants aren't showing signs of cracking, your tomatoes and what have you, the kaolin clay acts as a mild barrier from the sun that helps to hold in moisture and acts as a mild insecticide and a mild fungicide. And it's very inexpensive. So that's another reason why some of my leaves, you can't really see through the video, are a little milky colored, because I actually use a sun protectant so they produce more and don't have to put all that extra energy in regards to solar stress. Yeah, that's a good one to share with you guys because no one talks about this, and it's just a fact right now with our environment. And if you don't believe me and you're a climate denier, and I'm not going to say why, who, when, but it is what it is. And if you've been farming for longer than 10 minutes, you know a lot of things are changing in regards to how things are growing. But you can look it up yourself. Look up sun protectant for plants, and many of the huge agricultural companies around the world are now indeed using sun protectant on their crops. And they're not going to be doing this unless they had to do this and unless it was a necessity. But you can do it. You can use food grade calcium carbonate, which is also really inexpensive. You can find it on eBay. just a tablespoon per gallon, or the kaolin clay. Kaolin clay, a tablespoon per gallon. Shake it really, really, really well though, because it will clog up your sprayer if you use too much or you don't shake it well enough. And again, the benefits are plants maintain moisture more consistently during the day, mild insecticide, mild fungicide, and you can tell from my plants, they're pretty damn happy. Okay, I think I'm gonna wrap it up with that. Show you my 70 or 80 tomato plants here. And if you have any questions, please put them in the comments below. So you finally got your gardening video, everybody, and not a political video or something else. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other, because I believe how we treat each other on the streets is our ultimate reality. And if you like my quick money-saving tips, rants, raves, art, and occasional magic, please subscribe. It helps. But be aware, this is a hobby for me, and I'm not a sycophant. So something goes down politically, as an American, I'm going to speak my mind and give you my best and fairest, with facts, analysis on it. I will use my YouTube page as a platform from time to time in between this stuff. I want to show you, if there's one zucchini you have to grow, it's this heirloom Italian variety. It is amazing, and it has this really nutty flavor, and no matter how big it gets, it never gets hard skinned or mealy. And I'm trying to find one in here, but it looks like I've eaten it all. Oh, we found one. Thank you, Mr. Zong. Where? Oh, there it is. Holy moly. So look up Italian heirloom zucchini, and this is what it's going to look like. They have several varieties, so I'm not going to give you an exact name. Nutty, always thin-skinned. Even when they get giant, they never get mealy. These are incredible. And anyone's I turned on to the Italian heirloom zucchini, have to grow them every year. All right, bye for now.